Again, today I'm just going to go over some of the tools in the toolbar. In fact, all of the tools in the toolbar and why you would use some of them. Let me put some shapes on here first so we can get some idea of certain things. Put some colors on there. Okay, again, I'm going to go over today all the tools here in the toolbar inside of Illustrator. Again, we have the first tool is the selection tool. Now, the selection tool does what it usually does. It clicks on something. If there's no color inside of your object, like if I turn off the color inside this object and I try to select it, it won't select it because it doesn't see it, and I would have to select the edge to kind of select it. So if you're having problems saying, oh, I have an object here, or a triangle here, or a rectangle here, and I can't select it, most likely you probably because you don't have a fill in there. So that's a common problem that you may run into as far as trying to select an object. And other use of the selection tool is once you have objects that are on top of each other, let's say that I have this red object over top of the white one, and I'm saying to myself, I want to select the one that's underneath it. How do I select something that's underneath it? Well, you can hold down the command key, I think it is. Yeah, the command key. If you hold down the command key and click once, it'll select the, here we go. If I click once, it selects the object. If I hold down the command key and click twice, it selects the one that's underneath it. So once you have something that has a lot of objects and you're trying to select something, if you have something underneath something, you can hold the command key down with your selection tool and it'll select what's underneath it. Did you see how I did that? Again there. Oh, not command key. Oh, there we go. Still makes it hard to move it though. You can select it though and bring it forward, right? There it is, and say under Object, Arrange, Bring Forward, Bring to Front. There you go. So now it's on front. So again, that's the command key. Another great way of selecting things, of course, is to draw the box around something, and you can use the Shift key to deselect something if you don't want it. So if I wanted to select these three top boxes right here and not this one, I can actually just simply drag a box around them, hold the Shift key down, click on this one, and then I have these three selected. Okay, so be quick and efficient is very important when you're using a computer application. I remember when I had a job at one time, I was working with 4 different artists. And, you know, back in 1990s, early 90s, there was a recession. Wasn't very good economy. My company was laying off. They laid off everybody but me. I was the last person left. Why was I? Because I was quick at clicking and moving and things like that. It's important. I could do things like this real fast and go like this, go like that, faster than anybody else could. And so thinking and being efficient is important. You already kind of know the difference between here. You got your direct selection tool. Again, it's to select a point on an object. Okay, and of course we have our new and in the CS version you have your new little edge thing, the edge tool. And then of course you have, there's another one under here called group selection. I'm not really sure what the difference is between the group selection and there. I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of the difference between group selection and direct selection. I don't know. Seems to select all the objects for some reason. The other nice thing about the direct selection tool, of course, is you can select multiple points. So if I want to select this point, and this point, all this point, and this point, I could actually just draw a box around there, and it selects these points that you have there, and you can draw them like that. So again, you can use and draw a box with the direct selection tool. In addition, you can hold down the Shift key and select multiple points. Then you say to yourself, what does this magic wand do? What does the magic wand do? Okay, again, it's kind of like a selection tool, as you can see here. It's kind of like the selection tool inside of Photoshop, right? I don't really know. I don't really use the magic wand tool very much. I don't really use it at all. You know, I use it in Photoshop. I use it in Photoshop all the time. I don't know. Let's bring a bitmap in. Let me bring a picture in. We'll bring a nice picture in here. And see, the magic wand doesn't really work like it does in Photoshop, so I'm not really sure. I think the advantage of the magic wand is it'll select colors that are similar. So let's just say that I have this red box this red shape right here, and then I have another red shape right here, and then I have another red shape right here. Okay, see I have 3 red shapes now. Let's rotate this one so it's a little different. So I have one red shape, one red shape, one red shape. If I use the magic wand, if I click on one, it selects all of them. So the real advantage of the magic wand tool is that it'll select multiple colors that are similar. So let's say you have a design, you have, like you have right here, multiple reds. If I want to select all the reds at the same time, I can use the magic wand tool like this, and then I can change all the colors at the same time. It'll save you time than having to use the shift key and click on each object. Does that make sense? That's why. Oh, I like the red color better. So again, that's the advantage of using it. I could have used that today. I didn't even think about it. This one is the Lasso Tool, okay, and I don't know. I'm not really sure why you would use it. This is the lasso. I use it all the time in Photoshop to select things. I guess it's maybe an easier way to, instead of trying to draw a box around something to select something, you can use the lasso to draw a circle around something. Like I'm going to select all these points over here and then move them. Oh, that's object. Okay, let's try this. Grab all the points over here and then move them. I'm assuming that that's what it's used for. I'm not really sure. The lasso tool. Don't know. Okay, and then of course we have the wonderful pen tool. We got your pen tool, your anchor point tool, pen tool, add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert anchor point. We went over this tool many times. You can draw your shape if you want. You can then use if you want to add more points, you can use this one to add a point along the path. If you don't want to add a point, you can remove the point using the minus key. If you want to use the anchor point tool to convert it to a corner point doesn't have directional arms. If you want directional arms, you can use the convert tool again, the anchor point tool, and if I click and hold the mouse down, it'll actually give me anchor points. Anchor points have these directional arms here. Again, click once, makes it a corner point. Click again, makes it an anchor point. That's what it's for. It's a convert tool. So that's all these wonderful ones under here. We've already went over a lot of them. Of course, we have the pencil tool, or the type tool. You have your type here, area type tool. I don't think we really went over the area type tool, have we? We went over type on a path or vertical type tool, but we really haven't, and touch type tool. I'm not really sure what that is for. I don't know. It's new to CS. I'll have to figure that one out. But let's just talk about the area type tool because we didn't really go over that. So if we go to the area type tool, the area type tool is a tool that's used to stick text inside of an object, basically. So instead of, normally we use the type tool like this one, the type tool here, and we can draw a box and we can type our text into the box. Wonderful, fabulous. The font is in the box. But of course this is a square box, right? It's a square box. What if you wanted to have not a square box, but you wanted text to be inside, and let me move this fabulous picture out of the way here. What if you wanted a shape like this and you want to type inside there? Okay, so again, you can use what's called the area type tool, and if you click inside an area, it'll start typing. One of the things you'll notice is that the box goes invisible. It's almost like when you're using the type along a path. Remember, the type along a path makes it go invisible. So if you were going to do this, you might want to duplicate the shape before you go and type. You might want to duplicate it. One of the crazy things about using this tool is it has a remember the what is that called, the threading, text threading. So let me do that again. So I have some text in a crazy shaped box, as you can see here. Text in a crazy shaped box, and there's a whole bunch of text in a crazy shaped box. All kinds of text in a crazy shaped box. So if I want, when I'm working, and again, this is called threading when you have the text. And let me delete this stuff so I can have some space in my white area here. Let's move this stuff, move this stuff, move this stuff. Okay, so I have a crazy shaped box. Notice you have the little red X in the bottom, which means there's more text than fits in the box. one of the nice things about using the threading, or what's called threading, is that if I click on the red X down here, it'll actually make another box exactly the same shape. You see that? Remember how we were making columns of text? But it makes another box shape the same. Okay, so that, as you can see, that is how that one works, the type area tool. Okay, let's move on. Again, we have a line tool, an arc tool, a spiral tool, a rectangle grid tool, and a polar grid tool. Okay, the line tool, of course, makes a line. One of the things about making lines is that it's a stroke. You might have to give it a color to see it. Again, each line has its own thickness, usually measured in points. You can have uniform, or you can have a shape that is not exactly width. As you can see, this is standard. You can have different types of shapes here. In addition, you can have a brush on your shape too if you want. You can have an opacity, and you can have a style. We haven't really talked about styles. These styles come from rather old way of doing things inside the program when we would use it. It's a way of you can make like a pattern or something and apply it in here to a style. These styles necessarily don't have to have they can be a combination of a variety of different effects that you have made, and then you can save them as a style and then apply them to something else. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain that even more than that. Let's undo that though. Let's go back to a simple line. So again, I have a simple line. With that simple line, of course, you have something called an arc tool too. The arc tool will make, like what it says, an arc. Okay, so instead of making a straight line, you can make a curved line. As you can see, it's kind of like a, goes from 90-degree kind of angle if you look at that there. You can also double click on it, and you can actually type in and change some of the options before you make an arc if you want. So there's an ability to actually type in the arc. You can fill the arc with a color if you want. Right now there's no color here, but if I had a color, I could fill it in. Okay. The spiral tool says what it does. It makes a line that's a spiral. Again, you can double click on it. Oh, it doesn't look like it has any options. Rectangle grid tool does what it says, makes a grid. Great for making a table, I guess. Haven't really used that tool. Oh, look, and you can select each and every line individually. You see that? That's kind of cool. Oh, and if you double click on something, you might go into the group editing mode. That's why I'm in. That's why everything was grayed out there. You might need to go in the upper left corner and go back out. That's a common problem that happens to all of us. Let me leave this line here. And then polar grid tool, I've never used this before. I don't know what it's for. Looks like a pie chart. And then of course you have your basic, what we call primitives. Primitives, you got your rectangle tool, your round rectangle tool, your ellipse tool, your polygon tool, and your star tool. We've already looked at how you can alter these, right? You can double click on them and make something the same shape. So if I use the rectangle tool and I want to make a rectangle that's exactly 2 inches by 2 inches, I could double click on the screen after I choose the rectangle tool. Let me give it a fill here so I have a fill. Oops, why don't I have a fill? Dr. Phil. There we go. We have a Dr. Phil here. If I double click on it, again, I can type in the dimensions I want. 2 inches by 2 inches. Oh, 2 inches by 2 inches, and I'll have a square that's exactly 2 inches by 2 inches. And of course, I can duplicate it. Okay, so again, or you can simply draw with the rectangle tool. If you want to, you'll notice I tend to draw from the upper left corner to the lower right corner. That's how I draw with a tool like this. If you want to draw from the center out, you hold down the Option key, of course, and you can click and draw, and it pulls the object from the center out. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll make it a perfect square. See how easy that was. Of course, we've gone over the round rectangle tool. Again, you can double click on that and type in what the radius corner is to give you the round edges. Ellipse tool is the same. Polygon tool, you can designate how many sides. So if you wanted a triangle, you put a 3 in there and you get yourself a triangle. Okay, because there's no triangle underneath here, but you can make a triangle very easily by using the Polygon tool, double clicking on the screen and putting 3 sides in there. Can you make a 2-sided polygon? Oh, no, it doesn't. I guess you can't make a 2-sided polygon, right? That would be a line, 2 points, right? And then star tool is very similar to Polygon tool. You can do the same kind of things. And then you got a flare, lens flare, fabulous, the cheesiest thing ever made. Everybody loves their lens flare. Paintbrush tool we've gone over. Again, you have all the paintbrush options at the top up here. You can choose all kinds of different options up there. You can choose different sizes for your paintbrush. You can paint with your paintbrush. Again, it's going to use the stroke color down here. I'm going to put a little color in there. And again, the size is up here. And you remember, if you look at Donna's stuff, she uses this all the time. Do you see that in her pieces? She uses this paintbrush all the time. So the paintbrush has a variety of things. Remember we looked at the Artboard Tool and all those other tools, right? So we looked at the paintbrush. You can double click on it and you can say new fill from brush. If you do that, it's going to actually fill in the brush. So let's give it a fill color. So if we use that one, we can then go and it'll fill it in. Look at that. What a great sort of shape that is. You got your green with the red brush on the outline. Again, it was double clicking on the brush can bring you up options. Again, the fidelity is how smooth or accurate it is, going to follow your line. And we'll go over a little bit of these when we get to the following and towards the end of the semester here. So again, at the brush, of course, we have our famous one here, the pencil tool, and the smooth tool, and the path eraser tool. These are ones we really haven't gone over yet. So let's go over some of them right now. Of course, you have your pencil tool, and let me delete some of this stuff we have on my screen here. There we go. So again, you have a pencil. If you double click on a pencil tool, you can say fill the pencil. So when you're drawing with your pencil, it'll fill it in. Okay. If I double click on it and I go to more accurate, it's going to follow, and it's going to be a little rougher line. Watch how rougher it is compared to the first one. See all the bumps that you got there? Because it's more accurate. If you go over here to smooth and you try and draw, it's not going to be as accurate, and it's going to make it smoother. Now, if you're using a line and you're saying, oh, that's kind of rough right here, I don't like this roughness, there is the smooth tool that is right here. You can use the smooth tool, and what it'll do is it'll actually smooth out your line if you want. You kind of follow along, and you see how it smoothed it out a little bit? Let me do that again. The smooth line tool is where you can read, you have a little bumpy line. See the bumpy line right here? You can use the smooth tool right here, and if I just follow along the line, it'll then smooth it out. That's why it's called the smooth line tool. Then you have, of course, the path eraser tool, which will then cut out your path. I was hoping it would do the other side. It doesn't really do that. And again, this is the line that's around the outside. So if you want to remove the line that's around the outside, you use the path, what's it called? Path eraser tool. That's the stroke, right? The line that goes around the outside is the stroke, but you still have a fill on the inside, right? At least in this example here. So that was the path eraser tool. And of course, last class we went over the Blob brush tool. And if you look, the Blob brush tool is a great way to draw something, and it sees it as one object. Again, it's a little bit different than the brush. Again, if we draw with the brush like this, the brush is going to see this as one continuous line. Okay, but the Blob brush tool, when you're painting with it, it combines it all together into more of a solid object. If I click on it now, you notice you don't see the lines like you see in the brush, right? Because it puts it together. Look at that, it's like a red cloud, isn't it? Red cloud. Great for making clouds, Blob brush tool. There's some options in there. If you double click on it, you can see the size, okay? Again, you can do the angle of it. Just like, and this is great for making a calligraphy, right? I think I talked about calligraphy last class. Calligraphy is where you would draw with a pen, and you would have thick and thin lines. So if I draw with the Blob brush tool with this, I can give it a nice, you know, there's my name, scribble name there, and calligraphy, right? Isn't that nice? Calligraphy. Of course, you have the eraser tool, which I don't use very much. The eraser tool is used to erase part of your shape. You know, oh, I thought it's erasing to red. Wonder why. I guess it's the color that I click on before I erase. No? I don't know why it's erasing to red here. Kind of cool, though. Again, you have angles and things like that. I don't, use the eraser tool very much. What I would use, though, is a scissor tool. The scissor tool is a good one to split your object up. Okay, so if you have an object that you want to split into pieces, like I have this nice shape right here, and I'm going to split it into pieces, I can use the scissor tool. The scissor tool works by clicking on points, though. Okay, clicking on points. So if I wanted to split this, I would click on this point here. This is an object. You can see the dots around the outside. You can see the dots. The scissor tool works by clicking on a point and then clicking on another point, and it'll cut it between the 2 points. Well, this is a brush, so it's not a very good example. Let me get a different object here. Let me make another object. These are kind of cool objects, but they're messed up already. So let me delete these. Delete these shapes. Okay, so how did I make those shapes? With this tool? There we go. So again, the scissor tool works by clicking on one point and then clicking on another point, and what it does is it cuts it. And you don't really see it, but if I click on it and move it away, you'll see it cut it. So that's one way to cut your object into multiple pieces. It's called the scissor tool. And of course we have the knife tool that is very similar to the scissor tool, but you don't have to click on the points. You don't have to click on the points. Okay, what I mean by that is, notice when I was using the scissor tool, I was clicking on points. With the knife tool, you could just kind of cut like that. And oh, you gotta have your object selected. I didn't have my object selected. If you use your knife tool, you can just cut like that, and it'll actually split it. One of the nice things about it, oh, it didn't split it, did it? It cut it though. This is one object, and this is another. It did split it. Oh, did you notice how it put the stroke in there? Did you see that? Did you see how it put the stroke in there? So there's a difference between the knife tool and the pencil, and it put a stroke in there. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Again, that was the knife tool to cut an object. Let me pause this video. Okay, so we're again reviewing the tools here. Let me delete some of the stuff we were making here. This looks like an amoeba, doesn't it? Maybe it's the Ebola virus here. So next we're going to move on. Oh, we got our fabulous rotate tool. We've been using a rotate tool for a while. We learned the first week of class how to make the flower, right? Of course, if you're going to rotate something and it has a rotating position, most likely it's in the center. You can move that rotation. Oh, you can move that rotation point where you want on the screen so that you can rotate around that object. One thing you can do with the rotate tool also is you can double click on it and you can tell it what angle you want to rotate it at. So if I wanted to make another one that's 45-degree angle from here, I can say 45 in here, and if I even wanted to, I can copy it if I want. I can hit the preview button and then hit copy, and it'll do a 45-degree angle. Again, it's going from the center. Okay, we can move that center point out. Let's move it again. Let's move it over here in the corner, and then double click. Oh, it's just going to do it from the edge there, isn't it? Why is it when I double click here? I don't know. Okay, but you can double click and get options. Remember in class we did it with the we put it in the corner and we held down the command or the option key on the keyboard, and if I clicked and dragged, it would duplicate, and if you hold down the shift key, it'll make it a 45-degree angle. Remember how we were doing that with the flower? And then after that was what? Command D to duplicate. There we go. I could do that all day long. Imagine that. What a pattern that could be. Perfect for making spiral things. The reflect tool is a very useful one in that you can use it to flip something around. So if I have a shape, triangle shape here, and I want to flip it around I can use the reflect tool. Okay, the reflect will reflect where you click. So you notice how it moved the point over here, and then if I click and drag, it'll rotate. Well, that's rotating. I wanted it to reflect. Oh, I guess I have to double click on the object. If you double click on it, it'll tell you reflect horizontal, vertical, or an angle. And you can copy it, so you have two of them. Be nice if you could move this point to a location so it would reflect like this is what I really wanted. Look at that. It's a bow tie. Bow tie. So those the scale tool is this one right here. You got your scale, you got your shear, and you got your reshape. The scale tool is a great tool to reshape something. So if I want to make this bow tie that I have 50% smaller, I can go to the scale tool right here and double click on it, and I can type in 50 to make it 50% smaller. Okay, very useful. Notice how the stroke is actually scaled also. Notice how the stroke is scaled also. Remember, I think I was showing you that before. When you're scaling something, sometimes you run into problems if you're scaling with the selection tool and you're scaling it down. Notice how, oh, the stroke scaled. Oh, I think I remember we changed the option, didn't we? So if you're having problems with things like the stroke and the effects not scaling right, you make sure you check the box that says Scale, Stroke, and Effects. Scale, Stroke, and Effects. Remember that? The one that's underneath there is Shear. Shear does what it does. It kind of puts it on an angle. So if I wanted this to be on an angle, I would use the Shear tool, and it kind of shears it, and it's going to do it around this point here, so it's on an angle. And then, of course, Reshape. I'm not sure how that works. Looks like it put a point here. Don't know how this tool works. Don't know. You have to hold something down. Oh, I guess it puts a point down so you can reshape. I don't know. Not sure how that tool works or what it's used for. That was this one, Reshape. And then, of course, we have our famous tool, this one, which is the stroke tool, the stroke width. So if I have a nice stroke, let's say I draw a line. Where's my line tool? I draw a nice line. And you can use the stroke width tool, okay, to change the stroke. If I click here, I can make it thicker or thinner. So to make a shape like that very easily now with your stroke width tool right here. And there's a variety of other options in there. You got your warp tool that warps your stroke. What else do we have? You have twirl, pucker, bloat, scallop, crystal, wrinkle tool. I don't know. Can I wrinkle? Don't know. The width tool, though, is a useful one. The free transform tool does what it says. It'll actually allow you to adjust an object in a variety of different ways. Here we go. Let's use this shape. You need to select it first. I've never seen these objects. Constrain, free transform, perspective is a good one. We can draw things in perspective like that. This is a free distort. So these are ways of distorting your object. This is scaling it. Now was this one right here under the free transform. This tool is called the Shape Builder tool, and it's used to, I believe, split your object up. I don't know. Shape Builder tool. Don't know what it's used for. But I know what the other one's used for. We got the Live Paint Bucket and Live Paint Selection tool. What are those used for? Okay, so let's look at that. So let's say you have a drawing that has a lot of color and shapes in it. A lot of color and shapes in it. So let's make some more shapes. different colors, different color shapes, different color shapes, different color strokes, different color strokes, different color stuff. Okay, so if you have something that has a lot of shapes in it and you want to change the colors of the shapes, it's a lot of work because you have a lot of different colors and a lot of different things going on. So what you can do is you can take your objects that you have and convert them into what's called live paint. Okay, it's right here. It's called live paint. Okay, or you can use a pull down menu. Where's the live paint? Live paint make. So it's under, if you go underneath object live paint make, what it does is it converts your object into something called live paint. Complex visual appearance attributes such as brushes, live effects, transparency, and stroke alignment options may be lost when converting to live paint. Hit OK. What did that really do? Well, what it's going to do is, and if you bring up the swatches window, the live paint works well with the swatches. I don't know why I don't have the normal swatches window. There we go. Here's the normal swatches window. So how does live paint work? How it works is you can put a group of colors inside of your swatches, and you can use them as quick way of adjusting. Because right now, you might be used to in Photoshop where you can select an area and then, just put a color in there. You might, let's say Windows Paint, right? PC Paint, right? You ever use PC Paint where you got a little paint bucket, right? And you click on an object and it changes the color. Well, that's the same thing. That's what live paint is inside of Illustrator. You can use what's called a paint bucket or the live paint bucket right here. And if you notice, you'll see in the live paint bucket, what it's doing is you'll see some colors next to the paint bucket looking thing. That is the colors within the swatches in the swatches window that you see here. See the swatches window right here? And you can use the arrows on the keyboard to go through your colors. See how see there's like a little box going across the swatches? See them going across the swatches? See the colors changing? See the colors changing? Okay. So this is a way that you can scroll through, and once you're done choosing the color you want, you can go and click on the object and it'll color it. You see that? I can go through and then I can cycle through the colors, cycle through them, cycle through them. See how I can change the colors? Again, I'm cycling through the paint bucket. And you can do it, I believe, for the stroke too somehow. Oh, I guess maybe if we switch the stroke? No. I'm sure there's a way. But again, oh, now it's not working at all. Now I only have one color. I don't have any colors now. I only have one color. There we go. So I'm cycling through. It's used, some people are used to, kind of a paint bucket kind of feel. Again, it has to be converted to a live paint object to be able to take advantage of this idea. This is a stroke up here. That's why it's not changing. Okay, so it has to be converted to a live paint. And then live paint selection allows you to select the objects and then color them. So it's a quick way of doing that. So I really haven't used it very much, as you can tell. Of course, we looked at the perspective grid and we didn't understand it very well last class, so let's avoid that for now. If you put the perspective grid on and you can't get rid of it, the easiest way is go under View, Perspective Grid, Hide Grid. There you go. We've already looked at the Gradient Mesh tool in detail. We got our fabulous Gradient Mesh tool. Now it sees it all as one object. That's why the live paint sees it all as one object. You might need to go underneath the object, live paint, and say release so it doesn't see it all as one object. So let's go back to normal. Object, live paint, release, and it'll go, oh, look at that. I don't know what to do now. I guess once you go to live paint, you're screwed, huh? Let's try it again. Live paint, release, gap, expand. How about that? There we go. That'll put them back into normal objects. Ungroup. No, I didn't want to lock. Ungroup. Shit. Undo. Undo. No, it still sees it as a group. Ungroup. There we go. Okay. So again, we've already looked at our gradient mesh tool, where we can put our points on there and make our mesh. So what a great tool the gradient mesh is. Use it sparingly. It adds a lot of file size, doesn't it? So that was the gradient mesh, and then of course our gradient tool, where we can select an object and apply a gradient. This is where you choose the gradient here, and then you can adjust it. We've already looked at that in a lot of detail. Last class we looked at the gradient and how you can use the gradient with transparency, right? Remember using the gradient with a transparency? Then of course the famous eyedropper tool is very useful. I like the eyedropper tool. Let's just say that I have this nice blue color right here and I want to apply it to some other shapes. Okay, I can click on a shape, go to the eyedropper, and suck up the color from there, and it'll apply it there. You see that? Again, I can select a shape, go to the eyedropper tool, select the color, and it'll apply it there. Even a gradient color. Do you see that? Even something from a gradient like that. And then, of course, the measuring tool will measure something. I don't really use the measuring tool very much. I use the measuring tool in Photoshop a lot, though. You ever use the measuring tool in Photoshop to rotate an object in Photoshop? You ever use the measuring tool in Photoshop to rotate an object? Oh, if you haven't done that. Once I discovered that, it was like my life was so much better. Let's learn that while we're here. We're going to jump into Photoshop just briefly. I don't really use the measuring tool very much in Illustrator. But let's just say I have a photograph. Let's see. This photo. Okay, so if I zoom in on this nice rocket ship here, whatever it is, in Photoshop, and I don't know why my screen is so small here. Can I make it bigger? No. There we go. So let's just say this is on a little bit of an angle. Okay, so I want the fin that you see here to be straight. Because if you look at the fin here inside of Photoshop, there's a fin is on an angle right here. See it? I want this to be straight. Okay, I want it to be straight. Use the measuring tool inside of Photoshop to do that. How do I do that? Well, I use the measuring tool in Photoshop. If I can find it. There it is. It's under the eyedropper. The ruler tool. Well, ruler and measuring, I guess, are the same kind of thing. I use the ruler tool and I draw a line along my angle. Okay, so I want this to be straight. So I draw my line along the angle there. I go underneath Image, Rotate, Arbitrary. Arbitrary? Yeah. It calculates the angle, and if you hit OK, it'll rotate it automatically to the angle that you drew. Well, this isn't the best example, okay? But it calculated that this is going to be perpendicular, and then I can crop, of course, crop my object. There we go. Now look at it. It's great. So I use, of course, the measuring tool in Photoshop all the time. I use it almost daily. I use that almost daily. So that's why I wanted to jump to Photoshop to show you. I use that tool all the time because you're taking pictures with your digital camera, and there's always somewhere an angle in your picture, right? You're taking a building, you're taking somebody on the street. There's always a line, and if that line isn't perfectly straight, your brain is thinking, oh, geez, something is off, right? Just draw the line in the ruler, rotate arbitrary, and it'll straighten it out. Okay, let's go back. We were on the rule. So a measuring tool, I'm not really sure. I don't really use it too much. I'm sure there's a use of it. You can get the numbers in the info window when you're using it. That might help. It gives you an angle. So I'm not really sure. Let me pause this video before it. Okay, we're back inside of Illustrator now. Oh, I think we looked at the blending tool. My favorite tool ever. My blending tool. Again, back in the days, I was thinking of bringing a slide projector in so I could show you some of the art, the vector artwork I used to make 20 years ago, 25 years ago almost now. Yeah, 25 years ago. So in the old days, before we had gradients inside of Illustrator, we used to have to make gradients ourselves. And how we did that was using the blend tool right here. Blend tool is great in that it'll blend from one shape to another also. So there's a couple uses of it. Let's say I wanted to go from a circle to a rectangle. And I can even change the color. So I have a kind of purplish kind of circle here and a square rectangle. I can use the blend tool, and if I click on one point and then click on another point, it'll blend between them. But that's all good and fun, and it makes a smooth blend, but that's not really what I want. What I want is a shape kind of morphing. So I'm going to undo that right now, and I'm going to double click on the blend tool, and instead of saying smooth color, I'm going to say specify steps, and I'm going to put like 2 or 3 in there. I'm going to put 3 in there. What that does is if you hit OK, now if I click on the circle and then the rectangle, it'll actually put the ones in between. So if you want a morphing kind of shape, you want kind of a morphed kind of shape, what a great way of doing that. And you can move your objects around using the white one, so we can move and it'll follow. So you can see the shapes in between. It's kind of a morphing shape that you see here. So that's one use of the blend tool. That is. And if you want, you can, it sees these as a group. If you want, you can go under Edit, Object, Object, and then say Expand. What the Expand will do then is turn that kind of blending of it off, so it'll see these as individual shapes. You might have to do Ungroup also, but you can get them to be individual. Look at that. Can you imagine trying to make this shape without using the blend? Trying to use that, or like this kind of thing, or that kind of thing. Again, that was called the blend tool, and it'll do this morphing kind of thing. But what I use it for, again, like I tried to explain in the old days, if there is such a thing as the old days. In the old days, we didn't have gradients, so what we used to do is we would make a circle and then duplicate this circle and maybe make it smaller. And then kind of put it in the upper corner here and make that kind of lighter. And then what we would do is use the blending tool here. Where is it? And let me put in specify steps of like 15. That might be too many. 12. And what we used to do is we would click on a point and then click on another point, and we would get an object that looks like this. This is, if I show you a lot of my artwork that I did 20 years ago, this is exactly what it would look like. We didn't have gradients. So in order to make something look volumetric, we used to use the blending kind of tool and do different colors or different shades of the object. And that has a kind of look to it. If you look at it, and it kind of has a feel to it. And so, you know, you don't always have to use all these smooth blendings all the time, especially inside of Illustrator. You can use this kind of step kind of thing. And maybe I didn't want that many steps. I wanted, instead of 12, let's just say 8. You know, look at that. It has a certain look to it. It has a certain look to it. And if that's the kind of style you want, use it. It has a unique look to it. A more rough, maybe a more Illustrator kind of look to it. And that, again, that was called the blending tool right here. There's a lot of fun things you can do with this. blending tool. So let's make a symbol out of this. Where's my symbol? Symbols. Oh, symbols. What is this? Circle? Call it, okay, so I have a circle as a symbol here. Okay. The reason why I wanted to do that is because the next tool we're coming up to, oh, and I want to make it smaller. What it's so big? Woo, it's huge. Let's make a small one. Small circle. So the small circle, again, is a very, it's right here. The next tool that we're looking at, again, is the symbol sprayer tool. I think we went over this the first week of school when we were talking about symbols, in that you can choose a symbol and you can spray it. Right now I have this small circle, and if I want, I can kind of spray it around, and it's called the symbol sprayer. So you choose a symbol and you can spray it around. Okay, there's a whole bunch of different options under there. You can double click on it and you can tell it how many you want, how big they are, how many, the intensity, the direction you want them to be sprayed in. You move them around. So there's a variety of different tools in there. You can rotate them. It's not going to do any good here rotating them. You can scale them a little bit. I think the scruncher, that's it. So some are smaller than others. I don't know. Again, that was called the symbol sprayer tool. I think we were looking at when we were making grass and landscapes, where you want to do the landscape. If you use the symbol sprayer tool and you want to dissect the objects that are there, because right now I sprayed with a bunch of circles, and you're like, I didn't want this one right here. This circle right here is in the way, but I don't want to have to redo the whole thing. You can actually expand this, and what expanding does is it breaks it up into individual pieces. So if you use the symbol sprayer tool and you want to alter it, you can actually go under Object, Expand, hit OK, and it'll see them as individual objects, and you can then go and click on an individual one and remove it. So there is a way, if you use the symbol sprayer tool, to actually take the symbols and convert them into individual objects so you can delete them. There's a bar chart tool inside of Illustrator. If you double click on it, you can tell it what kind of charts you want. You want a column, a stacked bar, a line graph, an area graph, a scatter graph, a pie chart, and you know, it's just basically a graph tool. You can draw a box and enter some data. What am I trying to do? Sleep. I get sleep. And then you have a little graph, 0 to what's my sleep here. Can I get a graph? Can I get a, maybe I don't sleep. Eat. How about that? What else do we do during the day? We sleep, eat, and that's about it. Schoolwork. How about that? Sleep, eat, and school. And then you can put individual, I do 2 hours of sleep, 6 hours of eating, and the rest of the day, 14 hours of schoolwork, right? Oh, wrong chart. I need a number in there. And then somehow I know I can make this chart. So after I enter the data, draw a box. There we go. It made a chart. Now, of course, Microsoft Office can do it a lot better, right? You've made charts in Microsoft Office? If you haven't, take my Intro to Computing class. It's a requirement for graduation anyways. I'm going to do it after the Dreamweaver class. You want two classes in a row with me? Holy hell, that would be crazy. Okay, and then so that's a graph tool there. Then we have, of course, the Artboard tool to make artboards. We looked at that, and we looked at how to make the right sizes so we can make artboards for the specific dimensions. You can type in pixels if you want, right? Remember the The iPhone was what, 181 pixels or something like that? PX, right? Was it 181 by 181? I think it was something like that. So you make an artboard and then you squeeze your artwork in there. This one is the slice tool. The slice is an evil. Slice tool comes from a very old method of making websites. We used to make websites inside of Illustrator or Photoshop, and then take the artwork that we made and slice them up into individual graphics, and then put them on websites. Woo. I don't use that anymore. I don't know. I don't know why it's still there. The hand tool moves around. Print tiling, we already talked about that when we tile artwork to print. Remember that? And then we have our magnifying tool. We already know the command keys to zoom in and zoom out, or command plus and command minus. That helps a lot. We have our color tools. You got your switching tool. You got your fill color. You got your gradient color. You got your no color. No is good. Oops. And then the last thing I'll go over is the paint options at the very bottom. These are kind of new options that started in like CS2.5 or something like that. You got paint inside, paint behind, or paint inside, or draw inside. Okay, so if you choose one of them, you got your paintbrush. Choose a different color here. Let's say I got a little yellow in there. Wasn't it? Don't I want to paint inside? But it's painting yellow. I want a different color. There we go. It'll only paint inside that object. See that? So if you want to do something like this, you got your squiggly lines going here. You got your squiggly kind of texture action going here. Look at that. Look at that. That's a beautiful shape there. You got paint inside. This one, paint behind. You can see it paints behind, but the object's on top. See that? Painting behind. Don't know what that good is for. And then this one is normal. And then this is presentation mode. So if you say, I made the best piece of artwork, you might want to take this piece of artwork right now, put it on its own graphic here. There it is. There it is. It's on its own. Here we go. Beautiful piece of artwork here. There we go. And this is present. So you're going to show somebody this. You can click on presentation mode down here. Full screen mode, and then hit tab on the keyboard. It brings you back. Again, full screen mode, normal mode, full screen mode. That way you're presenting it to somebody without them having to see all the menu items and stuff like that, right? You say, oh, look at this great design, right? Okay, presentation mode. When you're done with presentation mode, you hit escape, takes you back. Escape. So that's all the tools and tools.